So, it's all about being curious enough to consider change. And, I went from being addicted to destroying my mind to being addicted to growing my mind. And one of the beautiful things, Dave, that I've realized and that I've learned in my journey and the programs that I've been through and my research is that you can rewire your brain. And a lot of people don't know that, neuroscience, neuroplasticity, it's beautiful. You can lay down new tracks, man. We all can get a fresh start.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Appreciate you being here. And today's show is going to be really geared around our guest journey. We're going to talk about his breakthrough, his challenges in life. Listen, we all go through things in our lives. We go through changes, we go through challenges, we go through wins. And this guy is dedicating his life to helping people and professionals unlock their potential. He's a life coach, he's an entrepreneur, he's a motivational speaker, and that's where he's really touching a lot of professionals and people. He also has a podcast called The Bolt, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. But as far as what he's doing, it's transformation. And you don't get to this point by not living this path. I mean, our lives are filled with challenges, and this guy is persevering, and his journey is what we're going to dig into today. We're going to talk about vulnerability. We're going to talk about his path and growth. We're going to talk about how he is affecting the lives of professionals out there in a positive way. So, Todd Bertsch, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave, I'm happy to be here, brother. Let's roll.
Yeah, it's so funny because we connected immediately. And it wasn't planned by any means, but we had mutual friends. I mean, we have some similar paths. I grew up in Ohio. You grew up in Ohio. But let's back up here. Let's give our listeners a little bit of background, of your roots. And we're going to talk about your motivational path and everything that came along with this and how you've gotten to this point today. But I want you to back up a little bit here and talk to you about the roots and where everything started for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me on the show. It all starts back to Goodyear Heights, East Akron. Like you said, you grew up in Ohio, blue collar town, grew up in a very blue collar family. It was all about hard work. My parents had 2 jobs as far as I could remember. So that wasn't just ingrained in me. In fact, I started working very young. I was a paper boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you probably, because we're close in age, but
so we
depending
are.
on your listener base, a lot of the younger folks don't even know what
It's a
paper. What
boy.
is a paper? Let alone somebody used to deliver it to my door.
Yeah.
In fact, Dave, you'll appreciate this. I actually won an award. I got a plaque. I can't find it anywhere. I wish I could, but I got a plaque for like newspaper boy of the year or something. Not a dry paper, man. That was my mission.
You started early. I started early.
I wrapped it up in a bag and put it inside the door. No, just tossing it and hoping it stayed dry. But it's interesting because I've told that story a little bit, and just going back to, I mean, that was my start into being an entrepreneur. Like I was learning how to do sales, client relations, devotion, hard work. We had to go collect Saturday mornings. I mean, what kid wants to, let alone work doing anything on a Saturday morning, missing cartoons, going door to door trying to get 75 cents for a doggone Sunday paper they owe. But you had to do it. You put a smile on and, hey, I'm here to collect. But it was a great experience. And I'm so blessed that, my father was a big proponent of it, and he helped. He'd drive us there, and we started off a couple crappy routes, and then next thing you know, we got into a nicer neighborhood, and we actually got tips. But anyhow, so it was just a great experience, and I think that is a true testament to how I was brought up. Just hardworking folks, and that's what I believed in, and that's what I've done kind of my whole career.
Yeah, it's funny. You and I come from the same. Really, I grew up in Cleveland. You grew up in Akron. We know those. They're very close in
Yeah.
proximity. But blue collar towns, and my parents as well. They were hardworking. Um, my mom was almost an entrepreneur. I guess she was an entrepreneur. My dad in sales realm himself. But if there's one thing that's ingrained in that part of the country and in other parts too, I'm not going to say, but you and I lived it, right? It's that work ethic,
Mm-hmm.
that the ability to do multiple jobs or work till late. I remember my dad coming home late, right? And it was because of work. But there was that ingrained thing. And I don't think you can, I always talk about this in when I'm doing speaking events and motivational events, but you have a skill set and you have knowledge, but you really can't maximize those until you really understand how to work and how to break through those thresholds. But work ethic's where it all starts, man.
Yeah, it is. And I think you do have to be careful though, right, Dave? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that work life integration and just making sure that you're not working too much,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
depends on, I've had so many conversations about this recently, and a pretty decent debate last night, in fact. And it's like, look, man, it's about your season of life and where you're at. When I was 21 years old and just coming out of college, get my first job and starting a family, my first house, that season was different. I needed to
Mm-hmm.
grind, right? I
Yes.
literally had to put food on the table and, to try to have a house and provide, for a starting family. So yeah, it's all about how you define success. And that's one of the things I talk about on the show, on my show, and when I speak is, we just need to redefine what success means to us. And it's going to
Yeah.
depend on your season of life. But yeah, hard work. I mean, you got to do the work, right? That's
Yes.
just it, but hopefully you find something that you love, that you're passionate about, that you can just pour into and it doesn't feel like work. You know,
That's the
if
key,
you and
man.
I are working right now, I'll tell you, brother, it doesn't feel like work.
It's a lot of fun, man. This is
You know,
fun.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
how
agree with you.
that's really what I've been all about is one word I'd say scrappy. I was always the shortest guy in the room and played a lot of sports. I know like you did. So I had to fight, man. I had to scrap,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
where I wanted to be and compete. And I was a hell of a competitor. So I did whatever I could. And a lot of times that meant a little hard work, a little extra work, speed, power, as opposed to I didn't have the height, that was required for a lot of the sports. So anyhow, uh,
Yeah. I want to
that's
go
just
back to what you said though. I want to talk because this is really important. This season of life, okay? Because
mhm,
you go through these transitions, right?
mhm,
And one of the things that I always kind of try to impress upon professionals or people is y- you have to work harder in order to earn the right to work smarter. It's
mm,
not, hey, I'm going to work harder, or I'm going to don't work harder, work smarter. You hear that one. That bugs the shit out of me when people say that. What you
yeah,
really have to do is you have to go through the process of working harder in order to identify the path to work smarter. And you
mhm,
talked about the seasons of life, and I want to back up too, like because
mhm,
there's some things obviously that have molded you in the
mhm,
way that you're affecting people's lives today.
mhm.
And I want you to talk about the tough times earlier in your life that really kind of molded you today into the path of being such a strong influencer that you are today.
Yeah. I'll tell just a couple of stories. I won't go too deep into it, but
Yeah.
so early on, at an early age, as a teenager, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, like a lot of people. But it's recreational at first, and then it turned into every day, and then it turned into all day, every day, and then it turned into I couldn't do anything unless I was getting stoned first.
Yeah.
And I was in a fog, man, and no path, no direction. I was a janitor at a hospital, had no ambition on going to school or really any path whatsoever. And then there was an incident. I moved in with a couple of guys when I was 21 into basically a drug house, doing drugs, selling drugs. Not a good choice. And I got into it with one of the guys and came back that evening, and they just let me have it. They literally beat the living crap out of me. It was all I could do to get out of the house, honestly. Still have a chipped tooth that reminds me of it every day. But, the thing of it is, Dave, like, I wouldn't take that back. I wouldn't take that back in a minute. Like that incident. And unfortunately, that's sometimes what it takes for people is a traumatic event, right?
Wake them up.
To kind of be the inspiration, the nudge for us to even consider change. But it was at that moment, Dave, that was the pivotal moment in my life where I said, you know what? I can't do this. This is not me. I want to do more. I want to do something else and get out of this. And 2 weeks later, I enrolled in college and got a BFA in graphic design, and then moved on throughout my career. And then 2009, started my own business, Evolve Marketing. We just celebrated 16 years yesterday, ironically.
Yes, great, congrats.
So it's all about being curious enough to consider change. And, I went from being addicted to destroying my mind to being addicted to growing my mind. And one of the beautiful things, Dave, that I've realized and that I've learned in my journey and the programs that I've been through and my research is that you can rewire your brain. And a lot of people don't know that, neuroscience, neuroplasticity, it's beautiful. You can lay down new tracks, man. We all can get a fresh start. And when, you approach something like the history I had when you're destroying your brain for so many years, you can build that back up and start fresh, so to speak. So the brain's a powerful thing, and it's very plastic and very forgiving, thankfully. So anyhow, that's kind of my journey. And, once I got on that path, man, once I went into school, into college, I was ready.
Was that the turning point for you?
Yeah.
Like after getting your ass kicked and just finding yourself down and going, man, this is the turning point in my life.
It was.
And boom, went to college, and then you started. So let's stay there, because we're going to get to this point. So you go to college, you come out of school. When did you start your first business? Now, I know you had the graphic design business. When did you start? I shouldn't say your first business. So when did you start that business? How would that transition, and what kind of guts did it take? What was the pivotal moment for you at that point where you're like, I'm going to do my own thing?
I had been in the kind of ad agency world for several years, and I was at an agency where they allowed me to essentially build a business for them. They were more traditional marketing and advertising, and I came in and I had devoted my whole life, my career, to website design, development, digital marketing. So I knew that was my space. I lived and breathed that space for a lot of years. And so I convinced the owner to bring me in to help me kind of build out that portion of their business. And we did that very successfully. And, it just came to a point, Dave. It was a season in life. Interesting enough, I was going through a divorce at the time, and I had a young son, and I had met who is now my wife, my second wife. And she said, one night, hey, look, you just did this for so-and-so. Why don't you do this on your own? Like, I believe in you. So, and this is really important, something that I learned that I didn't realize. If you are thinking about starting a business, and being an entrepreneur, you have to have a good foundation at home. Like, it all starts with that foundation and support system. And you can probably speak to this, being a serial entrepreneur. So it was with that, Dave. And I just went out. I didn't take any clients. I just said, I'm a scrapper. I can do this. That I could have one client, one employee, or no employees, and 5 clients, whatever. But I'm going to be successful. And I visualized it. I manifested it. And, here we are 16 years later. I got a team of 10, and, I'd say a fairly successful business. And
great.
Have been able to, help people with their careers and feed their families. And I don't take that lightly. That's amazing.
That's amazing. I want to go back to what you said again, because foundationally, your partner, I can't stress it enough, is having that support system. And I've seen it both ways, and I've lived it the way you're talking about. I mean, I had sold, or I had one company. I was kind of exiting out, and I came home. to my wife who was pregnant. We just moved into a new house. We had two kids already. And I said, hey, we're going to start a new company. And she's like, let's go. Like, and when
Wow.
you have that kind of support like you had and I had, it does make it a lot easy. I'm not going to say it makes it easier, but I'm going to say foundationally, you can just start with such a great foundation
Yeah.
and really be able to build off that. And
Mhm.
I can't stress it enough. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
real
and
important.
that's what I did, and then, it just fast forwarding a little bit, I turned 50 years old during COVID and hit another point, a road another road that I was like, "Okay, there was something missing when we got back,
Mhm.
to the office, so to speak, after COVID, and,
Yeah.
I just wasn't quite fulfilled, and I felt like, there was
Yeah.
another calling." And I had a moment, I was actually in the gym, and I've been toying around with a couple of things. I wasn't sure what my next move was gonna be. Um, and then it just kind of dawned on me that, life coaching and motivational speaking, and I wanted to do a podcast for several years, and
Yeah.
this kind of ecosystem all around this same message of positivity and cultivating a growth mindset. I had been through that. So when I turned 50 and during COVID, I hired a high performance coach, and she took me
Yeah.
through Brendan Bouchard's program of high
Oh yeah.
and then
Yeah.
through Shirzad Shamin's Positive Intelligence program, which that program literally changed my life. And I saw how powerful that was. And I actually paid to have one of my key employees, go through it as well. So I saw the impact on her and how it changed her personally and as a leader in my company, as well as myself. And I said, man, I want to do this. I want to help people. I want
The
to
way
have
that
that
it helped you.
kind of, yeah, and when you start a business, Dave, and I'm sure you can relate to this, everyone starts a business because there's a problem and you have an idea for a solution and you're
Yes.
passionate about it and you're doing, right. You're an executor, you're a producer, you're doing the work because you're a one-man band, so to speak.
Yes.
And then you start to build, right. And you grow and you get a team, and next thing you know, you're not doing that work that you love to do when you first started the business. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what happened with me. COVID just changed everything and it became mainly remote, which I get it. It is what it is. I don't love it, but that's just a part of life. We have to adapt. And then, it's to a point where now I can be creative. I'm a creative guy. That's
Yeah.
what my background is. So this new transition for me is allowing me to be creative and do that meaningful work and really help impact, change lives. So it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Listen, this is what's so great about this, right? You've changed and like my path, I embrace change to a certain extent, right?
Hmm.
But change is often a daunting task.
Hmm.
So how do you approach the professionals you work with, the clients, whoever, in the resistance of change? And like, what's the first step, or what are your steps that you really like to say? Okay, we got to make some change here. I know you're kind of hesitant, but what steps do you really encourage them to take?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Dave.
Yeah.
So you have, if I always go back to some early work from Carol Dweck on mindset. So she was really the first one from Stanford to say, you have a fixed mindset and you have an open mindset. That is kind of
Okay.
the continuum. Um, if you're in a fixed mindset, obviously you're not open,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
just stuck. So I think what I am trying to solve is how to get somebody that's in a fixed mindset, which is very difficult because that person does not believe in change or
Yeah.
that they can change. It's easy when you have somebody that's kind of in the middle, right, of fixed
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
open. They've experienced some growth or they know that it can help them. They just haven't had the right coach or the right nudge or the right inspiration. But somebody that's in a fix, that's who I want to get through to. And that is a big challenge and one that I'm up for. But I start with the one question, Dave, and it comes back to one word. It's curiosity. Um, and that's all an open mindset is. If you can just ask the question, what if? So you remember when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
how curious you were. You were like
Yes.
an anthropologist, right? A scientist. You just wanted to explore and discover. You didn't care about failure or
That's why they're so happy. Kids are so
right,
happy, right?
right, because they're just out exploring, whether that's
Yeah.
on the playground and a leaf, a bunch of leaves on the ground or a pile of snow or catching snow on your mouth. It's just being curious. And so that's the one thing I'm really focused on is how can I get people to remember? Because here's the thing, everybody at one point was curious, right?
Yeah. Right.
They've just lost it. And we get so,
Yeah.
after 7 years old, we start to get into a box, right? We get into the educational system that's broken, unfortunately, for the most part. And we get into a box, especially as adults, and we just forget. We lose that curiosity. A lot of people do.
Yes.
And once you lose that, then you're stuck. You're fixed. You will not embrace growth. You will not embrace risks because for fear of failure, you won't want any feedback or criticism. So you're just stuck. So that's what I try to do is I just pose that question and say, look, you were at one point in an open mindset, in a growth mindset. You were curious. Let's just ignite your spark. Let's just ignite it. Let's just tap back into that. And once they can
Love
start
that.
to say, oh, wait a minute. Okay, you're right. I can do this. I've been there before. Maybe it was 30, 40 years ago, but it was there. So I think once you can get people past that, that's it, man. Once you cross that,
That's so good.
once you cross that line, now we can start having conversations about, all right, here are some of the ways. But it all starts with just one thing. And the biggest mistake people make is just getting overwhelmed and thinking I'm going to change myself or the world in one day. And that's just not
Yeah.
going to happen. So we
Yeah,
talk
I
about,
want to talk about that. I want to talk about how, like, because you've mentioned this, right? Change doesn't happen overnight. What's the biggest misconception people have about that pace? Like, I have my side of it too, and
yeah,
I'm sure it's aligned with yours. But talk to our listeners about that pace and change. If someone's out there right now, they know they got to make change. One, let's back up here, Todd. You got to be open. You
hmm
got to be curious. You got to be open to receive. You can't be locked up.
right.
And then now let's talk about the expectations of change and that transformation and that pace. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all times, but I'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what happens a lot, especially with already kind of high performers, right?
Yeah.
People that are already kind of in a open-ish mindset, is they want to check a box, right? So I'm going to
Yeah.
climb the summit, and I'm going to get to the top, and I'm done. Well, the thing is, this is what I call, and what Simon Sinek calls the infinite game. This is
Okay.
the infinite game of growth. It never ends. And so if you want to have this magic pill, this silver bullet where you're just going to be done in a week, right? Then that's not going to work for you. You have to, and this is what my coach worked with me for a long time, and she would ingrain it, embrace the journey, Todd. And don't worry about checking the boxes. And I was a perfectionist for a lot of years, and that I struggle with that. And it's just like
Yeah.
I'm a check it off my list kind of guy. I'm like, I need proof. But once I started to embrace the journey and just realize it's all about the journey, I'm not thinking about any end game. I'm just trying to get 1% better every day, Dave. That's it.
So good,
So
man.
when you
Love
have
that.
that mentality, then you're not worried about the result. It's going to happen. If you're practicing, I don't care what it is. If you're just doing a gratitude practice every morning for 3 minutes for 21 days, it becomes a habit. Now you can start to build on that momentum, and then you have it.
Yeah.
You have another habit that you stack on top of that, and then another, and you get that compound interest. Next thing you
There it
know,
is.
you're a machine, man. You're living a happy, healthy, and fulfilled life. But you know what?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen overnight. I've been doing this for 5 years, this journey of what I call just kind of life optimization. And I'm still working on stuff. I'm trying to, it took me 3 years to integrate meditation into my life. It was on my
Yeah.
list. And I didn't give up though. 3 years, I
Yeah.
finally got it this year. And I'm not a pro, I'm not a guru,
Yeah.
just being mindful, taking some time to be quiet and one with my thoughts. So again, it all just comes down to being patient and just taking it one step at a time, one
Yeah.
small shift. And once you see that, then you're like, oh man, I feel good. Like this works. And the thing
Getting
is,
wins.
most of
Getting
these things, Dave,
wins.
are so basic. They're so basic. They're free. Anybody could do them. And that's why people just gloss over them. They're the things that
Yeah.
are right in front of us. It's like the Cleveland music, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It's right
Yeah.
there. I haven't been there in 20 years. I know it's there. I can go there anytime, but I haven't been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
It's
you
right in
just
front of you.
being comfortable. You know it's there. You can get at it. But yeah, gratitude practice, meditation.
Yeah.
Some of those things are just super simple. Journaling, things that people could start. So that's what I do is I try to get people to start with one thing and one very basic thing that's
great.
free that you could integrate at any point in your day because everyone's schedule is different, their commitments are different, their season of life is different, so we just need to figure out what's going to work for you
Yeah.
and go from there.
Yep.
That's
It's what I always say, man. It's not about perfection. It's just about progress.
yeah.
If you can make progress every day, I think
Mhm.
that really wraps that thing up. The way you're talking about it is don't feel like you have to climb the whole mountain right
Mm.
now. Like just go get some wins. Like I tell my son that all the time, my kids that. Like get a win and then you get a win early and then stack a win. Go stack
Mm.
one today. Go get a
Yeah.
few wins today. And then
Right.
some days we don't get as many wins as we want, but
Mm.
there's probably something you've gotten out of it that's a win. But
Yeah.
you got to identify that and reflect. And I think that's really what you're saying here is it takes time and
Mhm.
it's not the perfect, and you're always on the journey, man. Like you
Oh
said,
yeah. Oh
you're
yeah.
always on it. It's
Yeah.
never going to end. Like,
It's not. It's imperfect, it's messy, and honestly it's beautiful, and that's the thing.
that's
So
it.
if you could tell
So
me, I
cool.
say, what if you could live the most happy, fulfilled, and successful life to be the best version of yourself? Would you take 21 days, which is typically what it takes to create a habit,
I could
to try
change,
one
yeah.
thing for 3 minutes every day?
Yeah.
It's not a lot to ask, man. But
Yeah.
again, you have to be curious enough to say, what if I did that? Would that change my life?
Yeah. You
Absolutely.
said something that was so great. Just don't focus on trying to be somebody or that person with the car or beat somebody. Just try to be a better version of yourself, like a better version each day of yourself and who you want to be. And like you started it with, like, how do you want this? You were there at one point where you were really happy when you were young. Think about where you want this to be as you go
Right.
along. So I love the conversation. You're spot on. So, let's talk about potential, right? So once you identify somebody, because I'm thinking this through as we're having this conversation in the
Yeah.
process, right? Now you get somebody who identifies that. Listen, I'm getting small wins. It's going to take some time. How do you maximize one's potential? Because listen, we have this thing between our head called this brain,
Yeah.
and I will tell you that it's probably the one thing that can hold us back. And it's the other thing that can also, shoot us to the stars as
Mhm.
well. But how do you manage getting the people you work with to their highest potential?
Yeah, I think it's really all about accountability at that
Right.
point. So whether that's having an accountability partner, being your spouse or a friend or a colleague or a coach, a life
Mhm.
coach, executive coach, high performance coach, having somebody to hold you accountable. To me, that is key because what happens, Dave, and you know this. I mean, you get you get older, you start a family, you start to move up, in roles and commitments with your job. And next thing you know, 10, 20 years go by, and we just lose sight and things can fall off the rails real quick. But if you have somebody that's going to hold you accountable, and if you put it out there, this is really key. Once you put it out there, right out in the universe, you say, look, I'm going to commit to X, losing 10 pounds walking 10 minutes each day, having a gratitude practice for 5 minutes each day, whatever, put it out, tell somebody, and it doesn't have to be somebody very close to you. In fact, sometimes it's better to have a colleague or somebody that's not so close, because
Yeah.
maybe they're the ones holding you back.
Yeah.
Honestly, and maybe they don't want to see you change. But the key is to have that accountability partner, and to set those SMART goals, and it's just to keep tabs and keep moving towards those goals.
Yeah. And this brings me to another question, because it is so important. But even in your early life, like you were talking about when you got into that situation and hanging at that house and all that, but how important is it to surround yourself? I mean, it's an obvious question, but the importance of surrounding yourself with people who are going to really, I think, hold you accountable and elevate, your game, right? Surrounding yourself with people who are going to elevate you. I mean, who says it? Show me your friend, show me your future, or something like that. He says, but how important is that, Todd?
It's huge. In fact, I just had a speaking engagement a couple of weeks ago, and that's one of the techniques. I talk about the power of positivity. And one of the techniques is surrounding yourself with positivity. So that's twofold. That's one, your tribe, your people, right? So just like me, when I was 14 years old, my tribe at that time, they were all doing drugs and doing those things. Not bad people at all, good people, really, but that's just what they were doing. That's all I saw. I wasn't around people that were getting good grades or, trying to go to college or do anything crazy. That's what we were doing. And okay, I had to make that choice, and I did. And, I stick to it, but that's what I was surrounded with. So what I tell people is look at what you surround yourself with in terms of your people, your relationships, but also the content. And this is the one that people don't realize. It's easy to think about your relationships and your colleagues and everyone around you, but we are being bombarded with so much content, Dave. So think about your feeds, right? Your phone, your TikTok feed, your Instagram feed, your Facebook feed. What types of channels, what types of people, what types of influencers are you following? Right? And are they serving you positivity, or is it all negative and bringing you down? The podcasts you listen to, the shows you're streaming on Hulu and Netflix, right? The books that you're reading, all those things,
All of them, man.
all of them. So it's important. You are a product of your environment.
Yep. Good inputs, good outputs, brother.
We say garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. There you go. You go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so true. And there's so many great things out there. Just this podcast alone, right? What we're talking about, and transformation and getting the most out of your life and what you want it to be. Like there's great books, and there's just so much, but there's also, it's easy access. You
go
don't
down.
know what to believe. Yeah, you can go down a path, and you could hear one thing one day on something else, one thing, and the next day it's a different thing or somebody else's perspective, right? So you got to be careful. Yeah,
they call it doom scrolling for a reason, right?
Yes, they do.
But here's the thing. Here is the positive thing. The good thing about these social media applications is there is an algorithm that's built into it. It is a result. It is showing results of what you are essentially telling it. So you can reprogram that thing. You start following people who are positive, like Dave and Todd. You start following different channels about whatever you're interested in, but more positive, uplifting things. That's what your feed is going to be fed with, essentially, right? So you can change. I just heard that on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. I was like,
so true.
I mean, it's the obvious thing, but again, you're a product of. Here's the thing: you are in control of most everything as an adult. You have to make the choice.
You got to make the choice.
And
I want everyone who's listening there, go grab your feed on your TikTok or your Instagram and start looking at your feed and start doing some self-analyzation of what's being thrown at you, because it's a direct reflection of what you're bringing in to your life. I mean, it's so true. And again, I'm not trying to impress anybody, just to press upon you that like David Goggins, Ed Millett, like all those feeds come up on mine all the time, or motivational feeds. Sylvester Stallone, he's got some cool stuff too, but realistically, he's got some cool ones, man. And then they throw the Rocky stuff in there too, which is really cool, but it's a lot of fun. I do want to back up to something you were talking about earlier, because I'm curious, because I'm a huge fan of Ed Millett, and Brendan Burchard is one of his right-hand guys. They do a lot of work together. Talk to me about one of the things that, one of the more impact, and it could be a few, but more impactful things that really you pulled out of that coaching, that life coaching. Obviously accountability is probably a big part of it as well, just knowing about both of those guys. But what was one of the most impactful things, or few things, that you pulled out of that?
Clarity.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. It was all about clarity and just getting clear and intentional about everything. So when you're very clear on what your goals are, what your ambitions are, what your passions are, then you can move everything towards that North Star, right? And you start to live a fulfilled, happy, optimized life. And there's obviously a lot of techniques to get there, but essentially what it comes down to is just being clear, having that clarity. Yeah.
Clarity.
So, and what I like to say, Dave, is I start everybody off with a life audit. So I created this life audit tool. It's a PDF. You can find it on my website. It's called the Spark Life Audit Tool. And, it talks about every pillar in your life, from your health, fitness, your faith, your happiness, your career, your relationships, and it asks you questions about, each one of those life pillars to get you thinking about, okay, am I serving myself in a good way? And what it does is it starts to uncover where your strengths are in each one of those pillars, and then also where some of your weaknesses are. And then you can start to identify those and bring those to the surface. And then you start to get clarity, right, on what you need to work on. So it's not beating yourself up, it's celebrating. There's some, like you said, there's some wins in there. It's important to say, oh man, I've been, crushing it in this area. Like for me, it was, great in movement and health and fitness, crushing it. But faith was always something that I wanted to, get back into and make it more important in my life. But I hadn't done it. But doing that audit reminded me every year. And this year I finally said, that's it, man. It's going to happen. And it has.
That's great.
But and you know what, Dave? Honestly, what it comes down to is, you said it about 5 minutes ago. It's all about reflection.
Yeah.
It's all about reflection. And that's what an audit is, right? Postmortem audit. It's going back to really take a look at things and just pausing. We move too fast. So just slow the hell down and just take a minute to just audit yourself and what you're doing and say, am I happy? Is this what I was meant to do? Is there anything that I can do to be a better person? And here's the thing that I learned, Dave, that I was kind of surprised about when I started down this kind of personal growth journey, is I thought it was all about me. And I was, working on the things that I needed to work on and a couple areas that I felt were broken. But the beautiful thing is, man, it impacts every single relationship in your life. So I then became a better leader, a better business owner, a better husband, a better father, a better colleague, a better friend, a better son. All of my
foundation, man. It's the foundation. It's so fantastic
of me doing that work. And it's just exponential, the effect of that. Right?
It's unbelievable when, and it's not an easy thing I will tell you, the audits they're not easy to do. Okay. But here's the deal. If you're working with someone, it's between you and them, but it's really you anyway, right? Yeah. Like it starts with you, but once you've got that foundation, and you said the best word, clarity. Once you have clarity on the type of changes you want to make, it starts rippling out into the universe, right? It just, and then you talked earlier, I mean, we can go out, but then you talk about manifestations and things and how you want your life to be. And you've got this foundation and you start rippling out, and it's amazing how the universe just works with you to try to make it just makes shit happen because you've got the core foundation, you're rippling the positive waves out or whatever you want into the universe on how you want things done. And it just starts falling in place. And now on the flip side, and not to go negative, but it can that's how it goes for people who go down the wrong path, is they essentially do the same thing, but their foundation is weak. They throw these negative ripples out there and then they go down a bad path. But from the positive standpoint, yes, then you talk about the manifestation, which you mentioned earlier. Talk to me about your belief in that, because I want to hear your approaches and maybe some of your techniques and on the manifestation.
Yeah, man. Oh, you just gave me goosebumps, brother.
All right.
Yeah, manifestation is huge. It's funny. A lot of people don't believe in it, and I get it, man. When I first heard about it, I'm like, this is too mystical for me, just like meditation, sitting there, and the universe, I'm going to put it out there. It's going to come back. It's easy to dismiss that. But here's what I tell folks. And actually, this is one of the techniques that I talk about in terms of getting into a positive mindset. Manifestation is huge for promoting positivity. And when you can be more positive and put more positive intentions out in the world, it will come back to you. And here's the thing, Dave, what I say is, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Right.
What is the worst that can happen by manifesting your dreams, by visualizing your dreams? You're just putting it out there, something that you want to do, that you want to have happen in your life. There's no negative effect to that, right? You're just putting something good and positive out there. So, but it is a practice that takes consistency and repetition.
Yeah.
And just like all of this, what we're trying to do is get into a habit, because once it's a habit, it's default and we don't have to think about it. We just go, which can be good and bad. We have bad habits, we have good habits. Yeah. We're trying to build more good than bad. But yeah, manifesting is huge. I'm a big believer in it. I'm actually in the process of trying to practice what I preach. So I do visualize. So I have two big goals, Dave, and I think you and I we've talked about this, are kind of on the same path. Yeah. Maybe you're a little bit ahead of me, but I want to be on a big stage doing the most amazing TED Talk in front of 10,000 people, maybe giving a high five to Tony Robbins, whatever.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
If we're going to do it, let's just do it right. That's what they say.
Yes.
But here's the thing, like, if I can't see myself there, if I don't believe in myself, if I can't see it, there's no way I'm going to get there. And why would anyone else even consider me for that, right? Especially to be motivational and inspirational. You got to. I do. I visualize myself there. Will I get there? I don't know. I'm doing the work. I'm sure as hell going to try, and I believe that I can. So that's all I can do, man. If it was meant to be, it'll happen. And just like writing a book, same thing. I'm starting to go through a manifestation practice, which is called the 3-6-9 method. Okay. And I'll send you a link. I just created a PDF actually for it over the weekend. Maybe you can include it in the show notes.
Yes.
But it's a common method. I don't know if it's just for manifesting, but you can probably apply it to anything. But basically it's the numbers 3-6-9. So at the beginning of the day in the morning, 3 times, you write down your affirmation, right?
Okay.
So if you're writing a book, what I want to manifest is to write the most amazing book. And then my affirmation is, I am an excellent writer, and each day I am moving towards writing this amazing book, right?
Great.
So write down that affirmation 3 times in the morning, the number 6 in the afternoon, write it down 6 times. And then at night, before you go to bed, write it down 9 times. 3, 6, 9. And again, just like anything else, just like with neuroplasticity and the neuroscience behind most of this, it's repetition.
Yes.
And I don't say you're tricking your mind, but essentially you're just feeding your brain. So if you're writing it, if you're saying it aloud, right? So it's another sense. And if you're visualizing it too, right? If you're hitting all 3 of those senses, my gosh, your brain is just like, yeah, I think you can do this, man.
Cool.
Right?
So cool.
You're just laying down a new track through repetition, and then that's it, man. You're just doing it. So what happens is,
so cool.
then you start to see, people, I start meeting people that have done TED Talks. I'm learning about tips and tricks and where to apply, where not to apply, and how to create the best speech, because I'm just now surrounded by all these things because I'm manifesting. My mind is just on hitting on all cylinders with what I've been
It's
feeding it. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyhow, yeah, we can
So
go on and
great.
on, but yeah,
It's so
manifestation
great.
is huge. I just did a podcast episode, a solo cast on manifestation. So yeah, your listeners can check that out.
Check that
And
out for sure. For
there's
sure.
a great story about Jim Carrey and
Uh-huh.
his
Oh yeah, I've
manifestation.
heard that. But yeah, tell the listeners that this is a
Yeah,
great one.
he wrote a check for, I think it was $10 million
Yeah, 10 million or
to
something like
himself,
2 million or 10 million, something like that. Yeah, yep. At a
for
certain
like
date. It
3
was
years
like at a
later.
date.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 years later from when he actually wrote it, and then he carried it around and got all tattered, and it was just a reminder for him of where he wanted to be. He was manifesting, that success, and then a year later, he gets the role in Dumb and Dumber. You know what he got? $10
10
million.
million bucks, right?
The same that he wrote
Unbelievable.
that check. I mean, that just gives me goosebumps just thinking about
I love it. I
it. And
love
he
it.
has some great YouTube videos. Yeah, he is hardcore manifestation guy.
Yeah, big
He's
guy.
been
Big
doing
guy
it
on that.
his whole life. So anyhow, but yeah,
I'm
good
a
stuff.
big believer in it, man. I think it's so fantastic to just put, you're right. You just put it out there. You don't, and listen, here's the thing. You can't just put it out there and then you still have to take action on,
Action.
and
Yeah.
get motion going
You got to do the
to
work.
begin. You got to be intentional about it, right?
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
intentional about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've lived this life of I'm a 100% believer in manifestations. And yeah, you and I are really close in a very similar path because I mean, I've done some speaking events, but that's my next thing, right? I've done sales workshops. I've done sales training workshops. I've done a number of those. And but I've done like one keynote speaking event and a few other just speaking events here and there. And it's a different gig, right? It's a different deal than, and so that's kind of my next path. And I have that same vision. I have myself in front of a auditorium, like a huge auditorium, and I wouldn't call it an auditorium. I call it more of a convention center kind of place where I'm walking up onto the stage and it's like there's people all around on this round stage. Like I have this vision of being at that point. And like you said, whether it happens or not, doesn't matter because everything that I'm going to do is going to be geared to that. And if that moment happens, great. And if it doesn't, then I'm still putting in the work and trying to be the best version of myself and most importantly, and I know you believe in this, listen, all this stuff that we've learned through the years, because you and I are the same age. It's interesting. There's a point in your career, and I think this is what you were talking about earlier, is you just needed more, right? You needed more. And for me in my career, which I think, and I know it's a reflection of you, it's how, with all the things I've learned and been lucky enough of the people who have been either influential in my life or I've learned from, or mistakes I've made, if I can just help somebody, if we can touch one person listening to this podcast and get them motivated to make change, like that's what it's worth. Like that's what it's all worth, is helping people and serving, for me, people personally or professionally. I mean, that's one of my manifestations being the best I can be to personally and professionally impact people's lives. And I ask the Lord to give me the power to do that every day. Like those are the things that I focus on. And obviously there's a few other things there, but realistically, if we can pass this along and help impact people's lives and make that change, like there's no dollar amount you can put on that. Like it's just amazing.
Yep. The best investment you can make is in yourself.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I'm right with you, brother. I want to go back to real quick what you were talking about, the road to manifestation, and hey, if we get there, it happens, great. If not, that's cool too. But I think the key there is embracing that journey.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't matter, right? I'm enjoying everything about learning about keynote speaking and meeting all these people and what it takes, what it doesn't take, the good, the bad, the ugly. it's just embracing every step that I'm getting closer. You know what I mean? So
true,
if you're
man.
doing that, it's fun. And then you're just not hung up. I'm not hung up on, am I ever gonna, next year in June, next year, I better be on that big stage.
Yeah.
The opportunity is going to present itself when the
Yeah.
time is right.
Yeah.
Truly believe
Exactly.
that. So
Big or small, doesn't matter. So,
right?
this has been such a great conversation. I can't believe we're almost coming up on an hour, but I want to talk about your podcast show because, you often interview people with incredible stories of growth and change, right?
Yeah.
Is there an interview or a story that really stood out for you? Because this is one that's standing out for me in this podcast. But is there any story or episode that really stood out for you?
Yeah, there is a number. Obviously, I
sure.
enjoy all my guests, and everyone's got a story, right? And we've all been through struggles, some more than others.
Yeah.
But there is one I had. His name is Todd Blyleven.
Okay.
I don't know if that last name should sound
Last name
familiar.
Bert Blyleven was it the
That's his
pitcher,
son.
right?
That's his son.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So Todd Blyleven, Bert Blyleven's son, played for the Cleveland Indians, the Mets.
Yeah.
He's in the Hall of Fame, professional MLB pitcher, and his son Todd was as well, and started in his journey as a professional athlete. Well, Todd unfortunately was at the Las Vegas shooting, that country music festival.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, he was there with his wife and a big group of people. Well, here's the thing. Todd actually survived and was able to basically guide his wife to safety. Todd went back in 10, 13, 15 times to save lives. I'm not kidding you. He went back. He was safe. He could have been done and moving on, but no, he got called. He had a woman next to him as he was safe, and she was being helped by some paramedics. And it was hard for me to get through this episode. It was just so powerful. But he said, this woman's arm or her hand touched his arm as she was dying, and he just felt called. And the dude went back in over a dozen times and saved so many lives he can't even remember. He had incredible stories, and he had PTSD from it. And he talked about his journey. So now he's a speaker. He's done a TED Talk, and he's got a podcast. It's called Going In or Going Back In, and that's what he did. When you can meet somebody like that, and hear their story, and then we connected because we both love baseball, and we started talking about that. And his initials are TB, and his name's Todd, and so it was like best buds. And he lives in Texas. We still stay in touch. Just the most amazing guy and most humble guy. But this changed his life forever, and that's all he wants to do is just help people realize that we all need help. Yeah. And, if you're struggling with something, just raise your hand and get help. There's plenty of help out there and people that want to help. So that was a crazy one, man. That story, I can't top that.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Prepared for that one. In fact, when I spoke with him, it was just 3 days removed from the 7-year anniversary. He was still pretty. He says, every year the anniversary takes about a week. Just going through all the emotions and reflecting. And so anyhow, so you asked.
Bring it out there. Listen, that's what it's about. And your show, the basis of the show is really growth stories. It's not, the growth stories aren't always winning the Super Bowl. I mean, the growth stories can be stories like you're talking about that people, they've gone through some it's the challenge. Listen, you show me a leader. I always say, you show me a leader, and I'm going to show you a ton of challenging times they've had. Not a ton, but a lot of challenge. The pivotal moments in their life were the most challenging when they broke through from the red to the black. And it's not an easy feat personally or if you're running a business, it's not easy. Mm-mm. If you have a family, it's not, you have to be committed and you have to be intentional and you have to have that word that you used earlier and you have to have clarity. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we can get knocked off and we can get back on though. You can get back on if you've got habits and rituals and and things that it can build it's that foundational element we talked about earlier. So listen, this has been such a great show. One more question, actually a couple more before we go, but looking ahead, what's next for you on your journey, as a life coach, a speaker? Talk to us about that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, I'm just enjoying every minute. Somebody asked me, how are you doing? How are things going with your new transition here? I'm like, I wake up every day feeling blessed and just stoked, to have these types of conversations and to have to be blessed to have the opportunity to potentially change somebody's life. That's just like being a leader, a business owner, a parent. That's heavy, and I don't take that for granted. So yeah, it's beautiful, man. What's next? I don't know. I have big goals, a TED Talk when the time's right. I just committed and started manifesting writing a book. So that's it. I'm putting it out there. I'm talking about it on the show.
Love it.
It's going to happen. I'm focusing in on the concept and title, which is super exciting. And then just talking anywhere I can. I'm just getting the reps. I just love getting out there and getting the reps.
Get the reps, baby.
And learning and honing and tweaking and seeing what resonates with people. It's very interesting to me,
so
but
great,
it's been
man.
good. It's been a lot of great feedback, which is inspiring. And it just kind of gives me that affirmation that, I'm doing the right thing and getting through to some people. So that's it, man. Just
impacting lives, man. I love it.
Impacting lives. One day, one life at a time.
That's great. That's great. I love it. And I'm in the middle of a book too right now. I'm through a little more than halfway. I'm actually more than halfway through it right now. But it's a process and I'm enjoying it. There's sometimes where it just freaking flows for me. And then there's other times where it's a little bit of a struggle to get it to where I want it. So, but more importantly, it's a process and I'm enjoying the journey as you talk about. I'm excited about it. Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah, that's key. That's key. So, Todd, listen, if someone wants to reach out to you, where can they check you out? Website? We're going to put it up on the screen here as well, but where can people find you?
Yeah, the best place would be toddbertsch.com, and that's BERTSCH.com. Or follow me on social. I'm on most of the social media channels at The Bolt with Todd B. I'm putting out tons of positive content. Sign up I have a Monday, Motivational Monday newsletter I put out every Monday, obviously. That's just good, positive content. That's all. So if you want to see more of that stuff and be surrounded by more positive content, like we were just talking about, I would love to connect with somebody on LinkedIn. I'm huge on LinkedIn, so I spend a lot of time there. So yeah, I'd love to meet some of your listeners and start a new connection.
Absolutely. Listen, man, thanks again. This has been a fantastic show. I know you and I are going to stay in touch because we're already comparing some notes on some things. I got a few things I want to bounce off you. You said you want to bounce a few things off me. Absolutely. I think it's going to be great to stay in touch with you and work together and just go through this journey together and have you as a brother, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's all about your tribe. Surround yourself with like-minded people and positive people. So I appreciate you, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
You bet. All right, everybody. As always, wealth, health, success to all of you out there. Go get a win. And we will see you next time on the show. Take care, everybody.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.